The crystal glasses clinked against bone china as my mother-in-law, Eleanor Reynolds, presided over another elaborate dinner party in her Westchester mansion. At 65, she remained the undisputed queen of Reynolds Pharmaceuticals, her perfectly coiffed silver hair and Chanel suit a testament to decades of careful image cultivation. I sat at the opposite end of the mahogany dining table, watching her hold court among New York's elite, while my husband Michael's chair beside me remained conspicuously empty. "Such a shame Michael couldn't join us tonight," Eleanor announced, her voice carrying just the right note of practiced concern. "These West Coast trips seem to be getting more frequent, don't they, Sarah?" I took a measured sip of Bordeaux, feeling the weight of expectations from the other guests. "The San Francisco expansion requires hands-on management," I replied evenly, "but he'll be back next week for the board meeting." What I didn't say was that Michael's increasing travels were no accident. For the past year, Eleanor had been systematically working to separate us, creating endless business emergencies that required his personal attention on the opposite coast. Meanwhile, she'd been laying the groundwork to challenge my position as heir to Reynolds Pharmaceuticals' research division, a position I'd earned through 15 years of dedication and my late father-in-law's explicit wishes. My phone vibrated silently against my leg. A message from David, my attorney. "Documents confirmed. Everything's set for tomorrow's board meeting." I allowed myself a small smile as I thought about the surprise waiting for my mother-in-law tomorrow. While she'd been busy undermining my position and trying to install her nephew Bradley as the company's heir, I'd been building an airtight case against her years of financial manipulation. "Sarah's been so busy with the research division," Eleanor continued, addressing her closest friend Margaret. "Though I must say, running a pharmaceutical company really requires a deep understanding of our family traditions. Don't you agree?" The implied criticism was crystal clear. I was an outsider, a scholarship kid from Ohio who'd married into the Reynolds dynasty. Despite my PhD from Harvard and years of proven leadership, Eleanor had never forgiven me for being new money, and therefore unsuitable for her precious son. Dinner dragged on, course after elaborate course serving as backdrop to Eleanor's subtle digs and pointed remarks. I maintained my composure, playing the role of dutiful daughter-in-law while my mind raced through tomorrow's carefully orchestrated plan. Later that night, in the privacy of my home office overlooking Central Park, I reviewed the documents one final time: bank statements, transfer records, board minutes, a paper trail showing how Eleanor had been siphoning company funds into personal accounts for years. She'd grown careless in her certainty that no one would dare challenge her authority. My phone rang, Michael calling from San Francisco. "How was dinner?" he asked, sounding exhausted. "The usual performance," I replied, thinking of how much I missed him. "Your mother brought up the succession issue again." A heavy sigh. "Sarah, I know it's difficult, but she's just old-fashioned. Give her time. It's been 15 years, Michael. And now she's trying to override your father's will, remove me from the company I helped build." I paused, wondering if I should tell him about tomorrow's plan. But no, his reaction needed to be genuine. "Just try to be patient," he pleaded. "For me?" I thought about the day I'd met Michael at a biotech conference at Stanford. He'd been brilliant, kind, passionate about modernizing his family's company. We'd fallen in love over discussions of clinical trials and R&D innovation. Neither of us had anticipated his mother's implacable opposition to our marriage. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit and pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, my own small reminder of family legacy. At 40, I'd earned every success through hard work and dedication. I wouldn't let anyone take that away. Reynolds Pharmaceuticals' headquarters dominated a prime corner of Manhattan's skyline. As I walked through the marble lobby, employees greeted me with respect, not just as the boss's wife, but as the executive who'd revolutionized the company's research division and secured 3 breakthrough patents. Eleanor was already in the boardroom when I arrived, holding court among the older board members. Bradley lounged nearby, his Italian suit and Rolex screaming of the entitled upbringing that made him her perfect successor. "Sarah, darling," she called out with practiced warmth. "I was just discussing some exciting changes with the board. I think you'll find them interesting." "I'm sure I will," I replied, taking my seat. I noticed David slip in quietly, carrying a leather portfolio. The meeting began with routine matters, quarterly reports, market projections, expansion updates. Then Eleanor cleared her throat, her perfect composure betraying just a hint of triumph. "Now for the main item on today's agenda," she announced. "Given the company's rapid growth and increasing complexity, we need to consider succession planning. While Sarah has contributed, in her way, I believe we need someone with a deeper connection to our family's values." She nodded to Bradley, who straightened importantly. "My nephew has extensive experience." Before we continue, I interrupted smoothly. "I have some documents the board should review." David began distributing copies of my portfolio. I watched Eleanor's face as she opened it, noting the exact moment she realized what she was seeing. "These records show systematic misappropriation of company funds over the past decade," I explained to the stunned board. "Unauthorized transfers, ghost employees, inflated contracts with shell companies, all leading back to personal accounts controlled by Eleanor Reynolds." The color drained from her perfectly made-up face. "This is preposterous. How dare you? Every transaction is documented," I continued calmly. "The external auditors have verified everything. There are also records of your attempts to manipulate share values before major trades, which, as you know, is a federal offense." Bradley jumped to his feet. "You can't speak to her like this. She built this company." "No," I corrected him. "Robert Reynolds built this company. Your aunt has been slowly bleeding it dry while using its resources to maintain her social position." The boardroom erupted in chaos. Older members demanded explanations, younger ones called for immediate action. Through it all, Eleanor sat frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "You planned this," she whispered. "All this time?" "I learned from the best," I replied quietly. "You taught me that patience and careful documentation are everything in business. Though I don't think this is quite what you had in mind when you were giving those lessons." The next few hours passed in a blur of emergency sessions and legal consultations. By evening, Eleanor had been suspended pending a full investigation, and the board had unanimously confirmed my position as CEO, the role my father-in-law had envisioned for me. When I finally returned to my office, I found a message from Michael. "Just landed. Heard what happened. Coming straight to the office." My heart clenched. This would be the hardest part. He arrived looking exhausted and confused. "Sarah, what have you done?" "What was necessary," I replied, handing him a separate file, one documenting every instance of his mother's interference in our marriage, every manipulated business emergency that had sent him abroad, every attempt to separate us. "She was never going to accept me," I explained gently. "And she was willing to destroy your father's legacy to maintain control. I couldn't let that happen." Michael sank into a chair, running his hands through his hair. I think I always knew she was manipulating things. I just couldn't face it. She's your mother. You wanted to believe the best. And now? Now we rebuild, the company and our marriage, but on our terms. Your father believed in me and us. It's time we honored that faith." The next months brought massive changes to Reynolds Pharmaceuticals. We modernized research facilities, expanded clinical trials, and established new international partnerships. The stock price soared as investors responded to transparent management and innovative leadership. Eleanor retreated to her Westchester mansion, emerging only for carefully selected charity events. The whispers followed her through the social circles she'd once dominated. How her daughter-in-law from Ohio had outmaneuvered her, proved herself more than worthy of the Reynolds name. 1 year later, I sat in what had been Eleanor's office, now transformed into a modern command center, while still preserving some of its classic architecture. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan spread out before me like a kingdom I'd earned through wit and will rather than birth. A knock at my door revealed David. "Mrs. Reynolds, I found something while organizing the transition documents that you should see." He placed an old leather journal on my desk. Inside, I found entries in my father-in-law's handwriting, dating back years. The final entry was dated just weeks before his death. "Sarah will find this when she's ready. I've watched her fight for acceptance, prove herself again and again, never compromising her principles despite Eleanor's constant opposition. She has what this company needs, not just intelligence and drive, but integrity and vision. Eleanor will never forgive me for this choice, but the future belongs to those who can build bridges, not walls. Sarah understands that. It's why I chose her as my successor, and why she'll lead Reynolds to heights even I never imagined. Tears pricked at my eyes as I read his words. He had seen my potential not despite my background, but because of it. Every challenge I'd overcome, every barrier I'd broken, had prepared me for this moment. My phone buzzed with a message from Michael. Just landed the Singapore deal. Turns out your idea about expanding Asian clinical trials was brilliant, as usual. I smiled, thinking of how far we'd come. Our marriage was stronger now, built on honesty and shared purpose, rather than obligation and tradition. The company was thriving, its research division leading breakthrough developments in personalized medicine. Eleanor had taught me more than she realized, about power, about patience, about the price of underestimating those you consider beneath you. But my father-in-law had taught me something more valuable, that true legacy isn't about preserving the past, but about building a future worthy of it. As the sun set over Manhattan, casting golden light across my office, I added my own entry to Robert Reynolds' journal. Today marks 1 year since we changed the company's direction. Your faith in me was not misplaced. Every decision I make honors the legacy you entrusted to me, not just of business success, but of ethical leadership and innovation. The Reynolds name now stands for something more than tradition and power. It stands for progress, for breaking barriers, for proving that true worth isn't inherited, it's earned. I closed the journal, placing it in the desk drawer that had held 3 generations of Reynolds leaders' thoughts. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle on, a constellation of possibilities, stretching to the horizon. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I was ready for them, armed with the lessons of the past and a vision for the future. The legacy of Reynolds Pharmaceuticals lived on, not in the society pages or charity galas, but in the lives we were changing through medical innovation and ethical leadership. And that, I knew, was the greatest revenge of all, not destroying what Eleanor had built, but building something better in its place.